Today on the Deep Dives, episode 73, you'll notice we have new chairs. We'll talk about that a little bit, I guess. But also talking about just music and in Scripture. We're going to talk about a famous singer and musician in the Old Testament. Episode 73, Deep Dives.
Josh, not only do we have chairs, but that dictates some other things. We're looking straight now. We usually look straight at each other. Now we can, if we just look straight, we're looking straight into the camera.
Yeah.
We evolve.
Yeah, we're experimenting.
We're experimenting.
Yeah,
this is what we do.
The tables were echoey, and we didn't really need the tables anyway.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
And I noticed like the sound is a little bit better now. We don't have the tables in, and this is, I don't know, a little bit less formal.
Yep, it is. I think we're probably going to add a table, whatever.
Yeah. I've already been looking for tables. If you find one, we'll use that.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Whatever.
What have I been listening to, Josh? What
have you been listening to?
I went to Monday after visiting my mother in Navarre. Came back and I went to an antique store, and I saw, as I walked in, I saw on the left a whole row of CDs. I went, awesome. I went in there to find some cameras, which I did. Chris, I found some really cool cameras.
Does that make you die a little bit inside when the CDs are in the antique store?
I didn't even think about it that way. I just was celebrating because I looked up, I saw a $150. Awesome, man. A whole CD for $1.50. I don't care. Well, you can put it outside in the rain. I'm still going to buy them. So after I found I went through. If you ever been to an antique store, have you ever been, Josh?
I love antique stores.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Chris, have you ever been to an antique store? So it's like 150 stores in one.
Right.
Everybody. I guess somebody leases the building, one person leases, and there's however many stalls, and they're all marked differently, and you bring it up, and then you pay for it, and it goes to the credit of the person that's renting the stall. So it takes a long time to go through these things because it's not like Walmart where you can go in and software is over here, food is over here.
But that's part of the experience.
That's
why I don't know. I guess I kind of sound like an old fogey now. But that's why antique stores are so fun, because it's like a treasure hunt.
You have
all these old things.
And it's very akin to going into a thrift store.
Yeah. But
it's kind of like it's the step above a thrift store because they've been filtered through, stuff thrown away, which you'll find stuff that you should throw away at the thrift store. It's like a step above, a little bit, certainly more expensive in some cases, but nicer stuff. And some stalls concentrate on things, like magazines, old magazines, and things.
What do you normally look for when you go into an antique store?
I'm always looking for cameras.
Okay.
I'm always looking for cameras, and it'll change. Sometimes my eye is open for anything, but it's especially highlighting any camera because, like this time, I went in. There's one person there that concentrates on cameras. So I go there first, and she's got 20 different cameras, all from the 70s. Some, they just need to be thrown away. Some are just to buy and put on a bookshelf, to look good.
Yeah.
And if I needed that, it'd be a perfect place to go to get that. And some are functional, and you can open the boxes, and which is nice if it comes in the original box and see, I've got so much of this stuff already. I don't need anymore.
You could rent your own booth.
I could rent my own booth, but this doesn't stop me from going through every box that she has and every piece of machinery she has to see if it works. It's just fun.
See, I always look for old math and science and engineering books.
There you go.
I'm in an antique store.
I'm always looking for that stuff too for you.
Yeah.
Like the protractors and things like that.
Yeah.
I see old ones and I go, I wonder if this would be worth anything.
Well, that's funny because over this past Christmas, I was up in New Hampshire at a really big antique store, and there were a couple booths with cameras in them.
Yeah.
And I thought the same thing. Like, I wonder if Destry would like it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've never done this, but if you promise me that you'll do this, I'll do this too. I'll take a picture of it and send it to you. Is this something you're interested in?
All right.
You know, because you're probably like me. Some of them you already have.
Right.
You know, and some might be some you're looking for. I don't
Yeah.
know. But anyway.
Why do you like old cameras?
The mechanics of them.
Okay.
Love, you as an engineer can appreciate this. The mechanics of an old camera is something that is totally lost.
Yeah.
Every camera that Chris and I have now is electric, has some type of electronic in it. Some of the cameras, like one you got from your grandfather's garage and gave to me, you pushed the shutter probably hadn't been pushed. How many years? 50 years?
Probably, yeah.
Push it and it still goes click, 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 click. And you look inside of it and it's all levers, springs, bellows, things like this. That it's just a genius way of putting things together. And you think this stuff sometimes in the early 1900s, this camera was put together. I've got one in my office with bellows, 1919. It was made in 1919 and it's got engraved. Made in Germany, something 1919, and you think this is pre-war. This is, these are where has this camera been?
Right.
You just start thinking about that, especially if you get one in really good condition. You can look at it and you turn, you push a shutter button and you see the lever come down, and a lot of times it's a lever like this that's coming down, and it's simply, you know what I mean? That simple.
It's like the sear on a firearm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like that, and that triggers a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
See, that's kind of like why I like old math and engineering books, because like the way technical stuff used to be taught is far different than the way it's taught now.
Okay.
And even the books themselves, like the construction of the book is different than modern textbooks are.
Yeah.
And the graphics that are in the book, because a lot of things have to be illustrated, like especially in engineering books where you're having to illustrate like the involute shape of a gear tooth, or how linkages go together, whatever. And in textbooks today, that's just done on a computer. It's it's imported into the document as a digital graphic, and go on from there. Back then, before there were those types of technological advancements, everything was hand drawn. So this book is like a book of art as well, like technical art, like how they would draw machine things, or how they would draw like just plotting a mathematical function, on an X and Y axis. The way they did it all had to be done by hand, and it was so elegant the way they did it. Gotcha. I have an old drafting book from long before computers were made that is all about not just how to draw technical things, but how to annotate them with dimensions and text and all that stuff.
Right.
And there are entire chapters devoted to how to create elegant and easily read fonts by hand on technical drawings, and how to use lettering guides and stuff. And it's a level of detail, and really it's a level of artistic style that went into technical drawings that's lost today. And that's just so interesting to me. And then just the way they teach the content, like the way math was taught in the late 1800s versus how it's taught today is entirely, arguably, I think it was taught better back then. Now we do have some, really neat tools today, like the ability to animate to show how tweaking a variable changes something.
Yes, right.
And that kind of thing didn't exist in the same way, but still, it's a really interesting thing to look back in history, and kind of like what you were saying with a camera, like where has this camera been?
Yes,
I think the same thing. Like the person who learned kinematics from this textbook back in 1919, 1920. What did that guy go on to do?
Right.
In an engineering career, this book probably sat on his shelf because, like engineers, probably not today so much because all textbooks are digital and rented. But when I was in school, I made it a point to buy all my textbooks because I wanted to keep them all, because that's what engineers did. And I have all of my undergraduate textbooks on a bookshelf at home, and I reference them.
Nice.
And so these old textbooks, they sat on someone's shelf.
Yep.
whose shelf were they sitting on?
It's
and
exciting to
what,
think about that.
Yeah, what projects were these books referenced for?
Right. What picture did this camera take?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just crazy to think about that. And we'll never know the answer, That's the little frustrating part about it. But to think about it, and even broken cameras, why did it get broken? Was it being used? Whatever.
Yeah. Every now and then I can, because you write your name in the front of the book.
Yes.
Every now and then I can find that person or some record of that person, like he was an engineer with a license or something like that.
Yeah.
And you can kind of find out a little bit about who owned this book. Like, one book, the guy ended up teaching at a junior college, I think in Tennessee or something, and taught like a shop class program or something. And
Gotcha.
this book that he had at one point was like carpentry math or something like that, and it was really neat to see, kind of get closure on where that book was used.
Right.
But it's looking back into history is always fun.
I have a lens that has a name of a doctor scribed in it, just with a little. It wasn't professionally done, but it's very clear. It's Dr. So-and-so. I don't even know. I haven't looked them up yet, but it's be fun to look that up in Google to see who that is.
Looking at notes from textbooks a long time ago, because every now and then you'll get an old college engineering textbook or physics or math textbook that still has a piece of paper folded in it that was a homework assignment.
Yes, I love
or you'll see
finding
notes
stuff like
scribbled
that.
in margins or whatever.
I love finding stuff like that.
It's really cool to see, like, oh, things haven't changed that much because he wrote this question in an old thermodynamics textbook that still troubles undergraduate engineering students today.
Right. I have an old Bible that I used to take a lot of notes. And even when I was writing this, I said, thought to myself, this is going to be funny whenever I find this later. I think I was reading Numbers, and I wrote, "Dear Lord, I'm sorry, I am so bored. But I'm going to continue on."
Yeah. Numbers is such an amazing book.
Yeah. I just want to be honest. Listen, this is my challenge. I'm going to continue to read it.
You have to read Numbers with a pad of graph paper next to you.
You really do. Anyway, so I went into this antique store and went through all the places I know cameras are. And I went to the last booth I went into. It was going to be the last booth I went into because it's the only one that I haven't gone into. So I went in. I don't know if I have a radar. I swear I do. I don't know. But I went in, looked over to the left, and I went over to the right, and I looked down, and here is a Minolta. I think it's 102T. And I saw a lens, and I saw a tripod, and I saw another lens. And I picked it up, and I opened it up, and this thing is in pristine condition. There's things that you can look at, the seals, and you can certainly, to check a camera out, you of course you want to see if it's actuating, the lever, see if it's actuating, and it was. Click, you push a shutter, click, that sound. People who love cameras, there's different sounds for different types of cameras that have the click sound or clunk sound or whatever it is. Different people like different ones. This one is very, very close to one of the ones from 1909. It's all mechanic. It was a film camera, all mechanic, no electronics in it. So this camera will run forever.
Yeah.
As opposed to the ridiculously expensive ones that we use now, they will not run forever.
Right.
But anyway, this is a old camera. The more I looked at it, I opened it up. I looked at the seals. Wow, that's in pretty good shape. I closed it. Everything is closing tightly, clicking nicely. These are all things I'm paying attention to. What you do to find out if it's actually working, one of the things you can do is change the shutter speed. So you change the shutter speed to 1/100th, click it, and it makes a certain sound. And you change to bulb, or you change to 1/500th, something extreme, and you can hear the shutter be quicker or slower. That way you know it's at least working there, right? Like a 1/10th shutter speed will go click, click. 1/100th will go click, click. This is a simple way of that. If that doesn't work, you probably won't go much further. That's working. All the knobs, everything's working, man. And everything there was a package. $150, 50% off. Now, $75 for that whole package
That's a good
is
deal.
a steal these days.
Yeah.
It is a steal. The camera itself would be $150, $200 on eBay. I'm sitting here going, man, Destry, this is what you need. You need another film camera to put in all the bags that you have with all the other film cameras and you have 15 of those lenses, 10 of those lenses, but they're not all in the shape that this is. Chris, I picked up the 70 to 200 lens. I looked in the light. There's not even dust in that thing, man. I'm going, oh my gosh, this thing has never been used. It's just so, I mean, these things 40, 50 years old, there's not a scratch on it. 50% off. I walked away and I didn't get it. And it's just one of those things, man, should I go back and get it? Because really, if I got that one, I could get rid of a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. Because
it's duplicate. But this is duplicate in really, really good shape.
Right.
But the point was, this camera was nowhere near anybody could see it. You walk into the booth, it's over here, down on the bottom shelf.
Well, now everybody knows where it is.
I'm thinking she put it 50% off because nobody knows it's there. Nobody's seen it,
Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't get it, but I did find I did find it.
I understand that sentiment though, because it's almost like something of this quality needs to be rescued from disappearing to history.
That is exactly right. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of those cameras in thrift stores. It's not that they weren't in good shape when a thrift store got them. It's just the way that it's been given to the thrift store and the way the thrift store stores it. You could have a pristine camera stored on the bottom of a pile of crap.
Right.
And it gets all dinged up and everything else. And you never know how that, it got dinged up, but that's the way they do it. I mean, they just, shuffling around. Oh, here's an old film camera. Nobody wants that.
Meanwhile, you're thinking this deserves to be respected.
Yes. And if you think about that, if I think about it needs to be rescued, that's the last straw.
Uh-huh.
Spend the $75 and get it, you know what I mean? But I didn't. Maybe I'll go back and get it. I don't know.
Well, that's how I feel about a lot of these old things. Like these books. Like, this doesn't deserve to be a decoration because someone likes the appearance of old books.
Right.
Society was modern civilization was built on the information in these books. Okay. These are important historical documents.
That's a good way. Keep talking, Josh. I'm going to leave here and go over there and get it.
And it's the same way. Like, you've seen my collection of old drafting equipment. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. Like, this is, the quality of these types of instruments doesn't exist today.
So true.
And these were the instruments that, drew the blueprints of the space shuttle, of most of the, the iconic buildings that we look at. Things like that. Like, these were the tools that built our world.
Right.
And I remember once looking at or watching a YouTube video on a specific type of machining platform. Mm-hmm. It's called a Bridgeport end mill. And the comment was made, it was just an old end mill, something that's for, machining channels and grooves and stuff into metal. And they said, you could rebuild the modern world with this machine because it's just so versatile. It's a machining platform. Wow. You can use that to make other tools to make stuff. And that always kind of stuck with me because that's how a lot of these old books and cameras and old drafting equipment is like. These were the old tools that built everything that we or designed or built everything that we had. It made what we have today possible.
Right.
And Isaac Newton once said that he stood on the shoulders of giants, and that's the reason he was able to advance as far as he was. Mm-hmm. I think as a society we've lost that sentiment. We just think this is the here, this is the now, and we don't really have respect for how it got to this point.
Right.
There was a ton of giants, not just giants in terms of people, but giant tools that we lose them. They're lost to history, and I don't know. It's
Well,
it's important.
when I'm thinking of cameras in that aspect, I don't think in terms of what am I going to do with this in the future.
Right.
I think of the present, wanting this thing, and
It's like a memorial.
yes,
Yeah.
it is and they're functional. If they're functional, it's even better. But do you ever think about what you're going to do with all the stuff that you've got? You think it's going to be in a guy's den sometime, or even, some of the stuff that you and I have camera-wise and drafting-wise and all the tools might be worthy of going in the Pensacola Museum or something like that,
Yeah.
to lend it to that. Do you think you ever thought about that far enough ahead?
Yeah, and one of my long-term projects is designing our next house, and in that I'm going to have workshop / office / whatever, and I often think a lot of this stuff will end up on a bookshelf or something that's they're prominently displayed, kind of like my own little personal museum
Yep.
of artifacts.
Yep. Okay.
Like these are the artifacts of industrialization or something.
Right. Okay. All right. So you're thinking about that a little bit. I've started doing that as well. My mother is starting to give things away or get rid of stuff so we don't have to go through it.
Yeah.
And I kind of start thinking about that too.
That desire's also grown too, because you know how obsessed I am with biblical history. I was doing this deep dive on the deep dive on the Persian Empire, because I was going through Esther and Nehemiah and Ezra and all that stuff. And
This is a guy who's do rugs, right?
yes,
The rug guys, Persian rug, Persian cats, Persian.
Yep, same people.
Same guys.
And in that research, I happened across a coin collector who had these old Persian coins for sale, and I've shown them to you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so, like, King Xerxes and Esther, who Esther's husband, the Persian Empire had these coins minted by the millions, and to the point where they're readily available today because there was a ton of them, and they're not that expensive to get. So I'm like, I bought 2 of them because it's interesting to have something that
It's right up your alley.
could
man.
could have been in the hands of Esther or Haman or
Yeah.
Ezra or Nehemiah or Xerxes. Any one of these possibilities could have been used to pay off the guys that built the gallows for Mordecai. That ended up being the ones where Haman was hung.
This is real stuff. This isn't a duplicate.
Right.
This is real.
It's a real thing. It's 2,500 years old,
Wow.
and it was almost a little bit of a mistake to buy that because even though it was only like $45 or whatever to get this one little, it's literally smaller than a dime probably. It's a little silver thing, but it's probably a mistake for me to do that because now I'm obsessed with like what other historical
Sure.
artifacts
That's where it
are
starts.
readily available that that might not be like rare in that they're super expensive, but it's just something from that era,
right.
and
For your collection.
yeah, for a collection,
very
because
important to you,
I think it's really important to have something that ties us back to the history where it came from. Otherwise, we lose that history. I mean, that was a concept in the Bible all the time. God always told Israel, make memorials,
Right.
so that you can remember the good stuff and the bad stuff. Take your
true.
kids here one day and tell them what I did for you, or
Yeah.
take them back here and give them the lesson about how you guys failed, and so they don't make the same
Yeah.
mistake. That kind of standing on the shoulders of giants type of concept, I think, is lost today because everything is digital and quick. And
So what you're saying is going back and buying that Minolta camera is actually biblical.
yes,
That's all I needed to know. All right.
I think if you want to grow closer to God, you need to buy that camera.
Okay. Well, I'm there later today. I'll get some more CDs. And anyway, all right. I think you asked me, what was I?
Oh yeah,
What have I been
what
listening
have you been listening to this week?
I found in that store one of the compilation. compilation.
What store was this again?
That was the one next to it. Love and Lingerie. I think that was that store. Compilation store. I knew it wasn't right whenever I.
Yeah, compilation store, something totally different.
So back in the day, like Ronco used to, just as an example, used to put together all these.
I had his food dehydrator when I was
did?
a kid.
Okay.
Yep.
I used to put all these hits together on one album or one tape or one CD, right? I found one of those from the 70s. And just as an example, whenever I was in college, I was in the SAE fraternity, and they nicknamed me Woodstock because of my musical taste from the 60s and 70s. So I saw this 70s hits, and I opened up the CD. CD was there, by the way, in thrift stores. You got to look inside because a lot of times they're not there. People get them and go, shake.
I think that, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not there. And you got to see if they're in good shape. Well, the only thing you can do is put them up into a light and just shine it. What's that?
Theft store.
This is theft store, that's right. So I put it up next to a light, shined it, looked good. Put it in the CD. That's mine, $1.50, whatever. So that's what I've been listening to.
Okay.
I got that and Elton John and Grease.
Yeah.
My buddy Kevin and I saw Grease 7 times. I love that.
Never saw Grease.
I just loved it. So I got that CD, but I've been listening to the 70s CD, and I didn't even look at what the music was. I didn't even care. I wanted to be surprised on what was going to like a radio. I wanted to be surprised on what was on the CD. So I just put it in. I just let it play, and it had 12 songs on it, and I was pleased with probably 11 of them. So I listened to that a couple of times this year. Stuff I don't normally listen to, but I love. You know,
Yeah.
Thin Lizzy. The boys are back in town. The boys are back in town. I hadn't thought about that song in a long time. Daniel from Elton John, I've heard a lot because I listen to him. I think a Kansas song was on there. Some other stuff. Just great music. And I was very surprised at the production value. It sounded really good.
Yeah.
I was very surprised at that. So
I was telling my wife about some of your musical preferences, and I mentioned Stevie Nicks, and she said, and she started laughing. She's like, Stevie Nicks. Well, if he likes Stevie Nicks, he can't say anything bad about Taylor Swift. Because
but I can.
My wife's a Taylor Swift fan.
Okay.
She's like, because Taylor Swift always gets criticized for writing songs about people she broke up with. Stevie Nicks did the same thing, but made the guy sing the song.
She's not wrong about that.
On stage with her.
She's not wrong about that, by the way. Listen, I never said Stevie Nicks was a nice person. I'm not sure if she was or not. You know, the saying, you don't get to know your heroes.
Yeah.
Pretty much Fleetwood Mac was the case for me, because I listened to a very long, I listened to 2 audiobooks, one from the engineer of Rumors and one Stevie wrote.
Yeah.
And they pretty much, they melded together really well. They talked about a lot of the same things. And, you know, from what I could tell, Stevie was a wannabe witch.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't hold anybody in any esteem that wants to be a witch. You know what I mean?
Right.
We've talked about this before. Do I still listen to her music? That doesn't bother me, but honestly, I just got turned off by it. I still love Fleetwood Mac, but not as much as I used to.
Speaking of witches,
Yeah.
that reminds me, I was in a really, really old house here in Pensacola a couple weeks ago, and looking and this was one that was, I think, built maybe late 1800s, early 1900s, something like that. But looking in the attic, the chimney had this twist to it, like it was a helical shaped chimney.
I've seen that before.
Yeah, and after doing some reading, like, why would you do that? Because there's a couple theories, like maybe they thought the twist makes the smoke come out, like it creates a vortex and the smoke, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's actually a Middle Ages inspired design called a witch's crook. The belief was in the Middle Ages that a witch could more easily fly down a straight chimney and like steal your children. So
about that?
they would induce a twist in the chimney
Wow.
to specifically to keep witches out.
Okay. All right. Never thought
And
about that.
it survived as like a design element.
How about that?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, Josh, that's all. That's all I got.
Okay.
I just, I've been listening to that music and.
Okay. Well, I went to that Alison Krauss concert this past week.
Alison Krauss at the
And
Wharf.
at the Wharf, and really good concert, really good artist. We ended up getting rained out, so we had to leave shortly after the intermission. So we didn't get to see the whole thing, but the part we did see, it was awesome. Jerry Douglas did Dobro solo, which was phenomenal. They had a new lead singer of the band Union Station that is part of Alison Krauss and Union Station. Who was a guy I've been listening to for years from another bluegrass band, and really good. They hadn't been together. Alison Krauss and Union Station, they haven't been together for like 10 years, and this is their first tour back together, like collaborating on stuff. And so it was really cool to see that. The album that they were promoting, I specifically didn't listen to it.
Okay.
Because I wanted the concert to be like my first
Very nice.
experience with the.
Okay.
with
Have
the
you listened
thing.
to it since?
Not all of it, but
Okay.
yeah, I have. But yeah, like the part we saw was really, really enjoyable.
How long is a half of a concert now? 45 to an hour, something like that.
Yeah, about that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
the whole thing started at 6:30, and there's about 30 minutes of like the show opener, who is another guy, Willie Watson. If you've ever seen, there's a Netflix movie called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yes.
He plays one of the characters in there that
Okay.
shoots Buster Scruggs and then sings a song with him as he's floating into heaven.
Okay.
As Buster Scruggs is.
All right.
That guy,
That
who's
guy,
a well, I guess technically he's not a bluegrass artist. He's like a mountain artist or whatever.
Okay.
But really good listening to him.
Mhm.
And then obviously Alison Krauss and Union Station was really cool.
Had you seen you have seen her before?
Yes, I saw her in concert once before.
Okay.
Yeah, over in Mobile.
Is her voice, does it come through live like it does in very pure, very smooth, very
Yes.
honest?
Yeah. Now, obviously the sound quality
Live is
is different.
Mhm.
It's I don't want to say it's not as good because it's live, so there's an element of it that's
Yep.
better than a recording, but
Different
like,
energy is what it is.
yeah,
It really
different
is.
energy. It seems like it hits you more.
Yeah. Sure.
Because it's the actual person singing it in the
Mhm.
moment. So yeah, it's kind of a weird thing to think about too, because like when you're listening to a CD that's been like digitally mastered and everything, the purity of the instruments and the voices and all that stuff are, far superior.
Yeah.
But when you're seeing it live, there's a different quality there that isn't necessarily like the integrity of I don't know, the waveforms or whatever that's being coming across the air. But yeah, it's a totally different experience.
It's impossible to reproduce what you're going to hear on a CD.
Right.
You're not sitting in the middle of speakers, right?
Right.
But it's like listening to a live performance on a CD. It's good, but you can't expect to have the same
Yeah.
quality
It's
of
not
sound.
digitally mastered.
But it has, especially if you were there, and I can relate to listen to the Grateful Dead on concerts. I was there. It's a whole different experience.
Yeah.
As if you weren't there and you were listening to it.
Yeah, it's a different type of quality.
It is, and just as enjoyable if you're into that kind of thing. I didn't
Yeah.
used to be, but I kind of am now.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so I'm glad you got a chance to see. Your wife went with you, and she
Yep.
enjoyed it as much as possible, with considering the rain and everything, right?
Yeah.
Good.
We ended up having to. A lot of people ended up having to leave early.
Yeah.
Because of the rain.
Right.
So by the time we got to the car, we were all soaked.
Right.
But it was still a fun time.
Good deal.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad your
recommend.
daughter did not go with you.
She wasn't able to because she, was in college.
Yeah.
It was final exam week and all that stuff.
She had some parties to go to. things
Yeah,
like that. No, she is.
But now this summer we are driving up to Atlanta to see another group that my daughter likes.
Okay.
I mean, I like them too because it's bluegrass. It's a Christian group called Arcadian Wild.
Okay.
We're going to go up to Atlanta, I think in June, and see them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, question: do you carry whenever you go with your family and you're going to a place that doesn't allow carry?
My official answer is no.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's a fine answer, sir.
Yes.
That's a fine answer, sir, because it's not legal.
Pardon?
Because it's not legal.
Well,
right?
it depends. Because, like, for instance, when you go to a mall and they have a sign that says, don't carry,
Yeah.
that doesn't carry, from what I understand, that doesn't carry legal
Yes.
weight.
Right.
But if it is found out that you are carrying and you're asked to leave, that does carry legal weight.
You got to leave
have to
right that second.
Yeah.
buddy.
So,
Or there's
like, whenever anyone asks, am I carrying, I go with concealment and I say no.
good deal. Very good. I didn't mean to set you up.
No.
We don't need to get into this, but you do need to know. If I'm with my mother, I'm with my wife. I carry.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not going into a bank carrying.
Right.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Even if I'm with my mother, even if I'm with my wife,
Yeah,
I'm not going to do
we
that.
observe the law.
We observe
Yeah.
the law, so you have to think about
But-
that ahead of time.
Yeah,
What
but
are you
even
gonna
when
do?
I am carrying or not carrying, I don't like people to know either way.
Right, gotcha. But if I decide to go with my mother to put, she needs to go to the bank, and I walk her in, I've got to decide what to do to that firearm before I go into the bank. It's a whole different subject, but you got to think about those things whenever you go. And it just reminded me, you going to Atlanta.
Yeah.
You're going to have your family with you, but you're going to a concert. So those are
Right.
those are elements that you got to think
I will
about.
observe the law.
There you go. Because you're a law-abiding citizen, sir.
Correct.
That's right. I love it. You been reading the Bible lately?
A little bit. Well, some of what we've been talking about has to do with what we're talking about in Scripture today, because, we've talked a lot about old things and the meaning of old things, and standing on the shoulders of giants, and even observing the law. All of those elements kind of come into play. So this past Sunday at our church, we had it was one of those Sundays where there is a specific theme to it. It was a yearly service we have where we honor law enforcement. We invite, we always invite law enforcement to our church, but
first responders.
Yeah, first responders. Yeah,
It was Law Enforcement Sunday, and then we changed it to be more general to first responders.
Yeah, because a lot of times law enforcement do respond first.
Yep.
I found.
Yep.
So, yeah, it was First Responders Sunday, which means we had a dinner for first responders or lunch for first responders, special service where we invite speakers from different law enforcement, first responder environments to speak, and the person who preached the sermon was a pastor who's also a chaplain in his local police department. He used to be a police officer, all that stuff. And so he was kind of giving his testimony and his life verse and the verse that characterizes his ministry and all that stuff. And
He was pretty good, wasn't he? I enjoyed him.
Yeah, I actually rewatched it after.
Okay.
So I saw it twice.
Okay.
And I saw it Sunday morning, and then over the week I watched it again. So he brought up an interesting verse because his sermon was based on his life verse and his ministry verse, and the one from Psalm I think is his life verse. I could get I watched it twice, but for some reason I'm blanking on whether this was his life verse or his ministry verse. But Psalm 37:26 says this. It says, "My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." This was a really interesting psalm because of who wrote it and because of where this exists in the Psalms. So,
who wrote that? Stevie Nicks?
a guy named Asaph.
Asaph.
Yeah. And I think
I
I
get
said
those
Psalm.
two.
I think I said Psalm 37. Psalm 73. So I switched the numbers.
get
Psalm
those two.
73.
I get those two mixed up all the time. Asaph or Stevie
Same.
Nicks. They sound a lot alike.
Right. Oddly enough, Asaph was a singer.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, he was.
Did he want to be a witch? Is that how it says?
No, he
Okay.
didn't want to be a witch. He was a priest.
Okay, good.
But
Priest for hire.
yeah, well, no,
No, no, okay.
not like the guy in Judges.
Sorry, Josh. I think his coffee's kicking in.
No, that's good. That's good. No, so Asaph was a singer, and if you've ever read through the book of Psalms, if you're paying attention, you'll notice some shifts throughout that book because there's 150 chapters to Psalms. It's really a hymnal. There's 150 songs in the hymnal of Psalms, and there's a shift every now and then because that book is separated into 5 different volumes, like book 1 of Psalms, book 2 of Psalms, book 3, book 4, book 5. Book 1, it's like the first 41 chapters. They're written by David. Well, a lot of the Psalms are written by David, not just those first 41, but these are the ones specifically that are like David-specific Psalms. That's where you have, Psalm 23, Lord is my shepherd, that kind of thing. Psalm 1 about having your delight, his delight is in the law of the Lord. In his law doth he meditate day and night. He'll be like a tree planted by the rivers of water.
Right.
That kind of stuff. Very poetic stuff that David wrote about things that he was either struggling with or just thinking about. And then...
That sounds like Van Morrison. I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, when you look at... So the mistake I think a lot of us make when we're reading through the Psalms is that we're just reading text.
Yes, right. That's right.
Like we're reading the book of Numbers or something. Not... And what Psalms is a bunch of songs where people are dealing with emotions and pouring their heart out and asking God really difficult questions, which we'll get to here in Psalm 73 here in a minute. But
if I ever shut up, we'll get to it.
Regardless, regardless. I always tell people, always feel free to interject. Yeah. I'm usually used to being in a classroom. Just disseminating information for 1 to 3 hours straight.
Right.
And
it's a lot of information.
I get into that rut sometimes when I'm talking, and I always try to remind people, like, feel free to interrupt at any time. Right. If you have a question, comment, joke, whatever, because it doesn't have to just be me.
A slur, sarcastic comment,
something
whatever.
like that. Well, so book 2 of Psalms was written by the sons of Korah. They were if you remember speaking of the book of Numbers, which you didn't like.
No, I just
hated the book of Numbers.
We won't go into it right now, but that's not fair.
I know, just
contextual, which you didn't like.
You were struggling with.
I'm struggling with. It didn't flow like I wanted it to. Anyway,
in the book of Numbers is that account of the rebellion of Korah, where he wanted to be one of these priests that are in the tabernacle doing the priest things, and went to Moses and brought that criticism, complaint, and Moses reminded him, like, what you're doing is what God directed you and your family to do. But if you want to try this out and go against God, let's try it and see what happens. And the earth swallowed him up, and Korah and most of his family died with him because they were all sort of in agreement with this. Well, the son that didn't, Asaph, he carried on what was supposed to be the tradition of Korah, and ended up being part of when the tabernacle got abandoned because Solomon built a temple. The sons of Korah, who were originally responsible for, I think they were the ones that, they dealt with the furniture of the tabernacle, because whenever the tabernacle would get packed up and moved as they're wandering through the wilderness. The tribe of Levi was split up into 3 families: Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Gershon, they were the ones that were responsible for for like the curtains and the tent part, like all the tapestries and stuff that
All the stuff you could fold up.
Yeah, all the stuff that you could fold up. That was Gershon's job to do all that, transport it to the next site and set it back up. Kohath, they were the family that dealt with all the furniture, like the altars, the lavers, the tables, showbread, all that kind of stuff. They were responsible for all that. And Korah was part of that family. Okay. And then Merari, they were the family that they were like the structural guys. They would take down the beams and the posts and all the skeleton that held the tent up. That's what they were responsible for, taking down, transporting, setting back up, all that. So, the tearing down and the transport and the erecting of the tabernacle was split up amongst these families. And then part of the family of Kohath was also where Aaron and Moses came from. So Aaron, his family were the priests that did the ceremonies of the tabernacle. And, they were the ones that would do the sacrifices and, all that kind of stuff. So when the tabernacle got abandoned because Solomon built the temple, which was a permanent structure, you didn't need these three families anymore to break stuff down, transport it, and erect it, because it was a permanent building. So all of their jobs got reassigned under David and Solomon. And so, this family that, let me back up a little bit. The guy who wrote Psalm 73, his name is Asaph. He was part of that family that got reassigned. So he ended up becoming a singer in the temple. The sons of Korah, when we talked about book 2, these were the songs that were either written by the sons of Korah or written by David specifically for the sons of Korah to perform, because the sons of Korah were like the worship leaders of the temple. Well, book 3 is kind of split up into two parts. There's 11 chapters in book 3, chapters 73 to 83. They're written specifically for Asaph or Asaph's family. Which is significant because when all of this stuff was getting reassigned in the temple, in 1 Chronicles 6, God mentions a couple people by name. He takes one person from the family of Gershon, one person from the family of Kohath, one person from the family of Merari, and said, these three are going to be singers. One of them is from the family of Gershon, a guy named Heman. Heman, like He-Man, Masters of the Universe. Okay, right. Mm-hmm. He was the one, and it even says like he's going to stand in the center, and on his right hand is going to stand Asaph, who was from the family of Kohath. Stage right. Yeah. Stage left was going to stand a descendant of Merari. I forget what his name is. Bob, yeah. So Ethan, there we go. So close. Yeah, you have these three guys who are like the head singers in the temple, and Asaph is one of them. And so in this book 3 of Psalms, the first 11 chapters of that is written specifically for Asaph, the singer, or the family of Asaph. Okay. And they deal with some pretty deep topics, like 73, where this verse comes from. The verse is, my flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. When you just read that verse, you don't really get the depth of what's being talked about in 73, because it's a really difficult question that a lot of times Christians struggle with. Because one of the things that we're often told is like, as a Christian, God takes care of you. There's entire like ministries devoted to like living your best life, and your best life is always ahead of you, and everything's going to be great, and God's always fighting for you, and He's always taking care of you and providing all your needs and all that stuff.
So is that the prosperity gospel? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And there is an element of truth to that, but
sure there is.
but also there's an element of untruth in that, because as Christians, we all go through stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes we ask this question like, God, I'm wholly devoted to you. I'm your child. I've been saved. Why am I going through this type of thing?
Where you at?
Yeah, where are you? And not only that, but what often makes matters worse is you look at someone else who you know is not doing what's right, is like an evil person, the unrighteous, and it seems like they're living their best life. Like they have everything they want, they're rich, they have a great life, they go on vacations all the time,
Right.
they're always posting on Facebook how awesome everything is, and you know they're rotten to the core. And
I don't know why I laugh at that.
yeah,
It's true.
but it's true. You know,
Yeah.
we've all experienced that, and so you start to question, like, God, why is it that the unrighteous seem to prosper and the righteous don't? And that's what Asaph was dealing with in Psalm 73. So let me read a little bit of it. It starts out, "Truly God is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart. But as for me, my feet were almost gone. My steps had well nigh slipped. For I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." That's a tough one to deal with, because he like, God, you've been good to Israel, but me personally, I envy the foolish because I see the prosperity of the wicked. It says, "There are no bands in their death, but their strength is firm. They're not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Therefore, pride compasseth them about as a chain. Violence covereth them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than the heart could wish. They're corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens. Their tongue walketh through the earth. Therefore his people return hither, and waters of a full cup are wrung out to them. And they say, How doth God know? And is there knowledge in the Most High? Behold, these are the ungodly who prosper in the world. They increase in riches." That's a tough thing to deal with. Like, why is it that these people who not just are unrighteous, but are blatantly unrighteous, that shake their fist at even the idea of the knowledge of God and say, this is pointless. Like, there's no reason that I should ever need God because I have everything I need anyway. And they make fun of the idea of God, and they make fun of the people who think God is important. And so he says, "Behold, these are the ungodly who prosper in the world. They increase in riches." And he says this, "Verily, I have cleansed my heart in vain."
Oh man.
Think about how low you have to
Right.
be to think that. Like,
Everything that you've cornerstone of your life, you're losing faith in that.
yeah, like
Everything
I've
done.
dedicated my life to your service, and yet it seems like my life is absolutely horrible. Have I been following you in vain? I've been there. I've thought that before. It says, I've cleansed my heart in vain and washed my hands in innocency. For all day long have I been plagued and chastened every morning. If I say I will speak thus, behold, I should offend against the generation of thy children. When I thought to know this, it was too painful for me. Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I understood their end. Here's the turning point in that psalm, because he's struggling with the idea of the unrighteous always prospering and him not. He says, and it was painful for me to think about this until I went into the sanctuary of God. Then I understood their end. He says this, "Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. Thou casteth them down into destruction. How are they brought into desolation as in a moment? They are utterly consumed with terrors, as a dream when one awaketh. So, O Lord, when thou awakest, thou shalt despise their image. Thus my heart was grieved, and I was pricked in my reins." So he remembers, like, yeah, they prosper, Yeah, they seem to have everything they want. They have a great life, all this stuff. But that's just temporary.
That's just
Like,
on this earth.
Yeah, and my focus on that has been a focus on the temporary. And he came to that realization in the sanctuary of the Lord. So in the temple is when he came to this realization. Because think about what's going on in the temple. There's the sacrifices, the atonement, the worship, the praise, the focus on God, the presence of God just beyond this curtain.
Yeah.
And prior to that, you're surrounded by these, like the lampstand and the showbread and all this stuff that has such deep significance, not just of God's presence, but of his power and his ability to right the wrongs of humanity. And he said, after he started to realize this in his mind, he says, "So foolish was I and ignorant. I was as a beast before thee. Nevertheless, I am continually with thee. Thou hast holden me by my right hand. Thou shalt guide me with thy counsel." Remember, he was the one that stood on the right hand of the main singer. And he's like, "You're holding me by my right hand. And that thou shalt guide me with thy counsel. And afterward, receive me to glory." So he has his focus on the right thing now. His focus is eternity. It's like, kind of like, was it Paul who said it in the New Testament? Our life is but a vapor. I think it was Paul. I could be wrong. But that concept is throughout Scripture. Like our life here is a vapor. It's here and it's gone. And he comes to that realization again. He says, "You'll guide me with thy counsel, and afterward you'll receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but thee? And there is none upon the earth that I desire beside thee." And then we come to that verse, "My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. For lo, they that are far from thee shall perish. Thou hast destroyed all of them that go a-whoring from thee. But it is good for me to draw near to God. I've put my trust in the Lord God, that I may declare all of thy works." So here again, his attention, his focus has shifted. Instead of declaring all the works of these unrighteous people and focusing on how the unrighteous seem to prosper, he's now focusing on God and like, okay, I realize that's just the here and the now. Eternity is what matters most. Instead of declaring everything about them, how they're prospering, even in spite of their wickedness, I'm gonna go back to declaring the works of the Lord, because I know after this life is over, we have eternity. And because I'm dedicated to you and I'm following you, you're going to receive me into glory. You're going to cast them away. And eternity is much more important than anything we have going on here. And I think that was a really cool, like, exploration into this thing we often struggle with as Christians. Is like, why am I going through this? And we don't often realize not just the purpose behind it, but the like reinforcing in our minds that whatever we're doing here is just temporary.
You ever listen to the Crab Family or Jason Crab?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you know the song "Through the Fire."
Yep.
And if our listeners and viewers have never heard that, please watch it, and watch the one specifically with the Tabernacle Choir. Is it the Mormon Tabernacle Choir? That's a live performance. My gosh, so strong. Basically says, God never said that there wouldn't be troubles. He just will help you through those troubles. If he is with you, if you've accepted him for who he is and what he's done for us, he'll help you through those and give you that long-term view.
Right.
And to me, that's what you just got through describing. That's a very strong, in this day and age, especially the way that we want to be rewarded is right in front of us.
Yeah.
We do this, we get rewarded. We do this, we get rewarded. That long-term reward is sometimes something we need to be reminded about.
Yep.
Thanks for reminding us about that, Josh.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you. And hey, let us know if you like this new setup or not. I kind of got used to it already.
Same.
Right?
Yep.
All right. We'll see y'all later.